Godzilla vs. Kong is directed by Adam Wingard and is the story of exactly what the title tells you. The human beings that are in this movie are essentially trying to find something and they need Kong to do it because Kong could potentially lead them to this thing that could save the world. As they're on their way there, Godzilla attacks because there can only be one true Titan in this world, and so begins a battle for the ages. Really, that's the plot of this movie, and that's all you need to know. This is a film that's the fourth now in the MonsterVerse series when it comes to the series as a whole. I've been okay with it. The first one I thought was really great. I like the first Godzilla quite a bit. In fact, I was just watching it the other day because it came out on 4K, and it still looks fantastic. Kong Skull Island, visually spectacular. Thought the human element really sidelined the entire movie as a whole and made things very messy. King of the Monsters even more so. So when I was watching this film, I was kind of like, alright, I'm excited, but I'm also a little worried because they might try to overdo that one element of these movies that really doesn't need to be overdone. But, like I said in the beginning of my description, it's exactly what the title says it is. This movie is Godzilla vs. Kong, and it doesn't forget that for even a second. Once the first act of this movie is clear and they've set up essentially what you're about to see in terms of the conflict, in terms of where this plot is going, the film becomes one gigantic action spectacle with one amazing set piece after another. And I really had a great time with this movie. This was awesome. Now, you might be thinking, but your issues with the other ones were the human elements. This also has a human element. Why is this one not an issue? Because it doesn't overshadow the main thing that you're there to see. In the case of both the other movies that I mentioned, I felt like it was taking over the things that were important, really, to the film. Like, for example, Godzilla King of the Monsters. It was the human element that eventually took over the entire film, not so much the rest of the things that you were actually there to see, which was a bunch of really iconic monsters slug it out, because that's really what it's about. Of course, you can build a narrative around that, one that is compelling enough to keep you invested in the other characters in it, but when the focus shifts away from that, that's where things become messy. And that's exactly what happened earlier, but in this case, it doesn't happen. In this case, what I said earlier is what happens. They give you just enough with the human characters and their plot lines to keep you invested in their storylines, while also making sure that they don't take over the entire story. Because at the end of the day, you're there for the two titans to slug it out, and that's exactly what you get. And I, like I said, had a really great time with that. Once the action gets going, it's visually spectacular. The effects in this are maybe my favorite of the four movies. Although I do think one element of the very first Godzilla movie I still think it did it better than any of the other three movies so far. But I really like what they were doing here, especially with the facial animation and the movements of the characters. Godzilla is the fastest he's ever been. He's pretty much like an agile lizard at this point, which is something that they started to go into at the end of King of the Monsters because he gets that big thermonuclear blast and this guy's like agile as hell. In this one, he's even more so. But what they really do with some of the expressions I thought was really great. For example, in this movie, there is a little girl who can communicate with Kong, and they do so via sign language. This is one of the most touching aspects of the entire film, is the emotional core of things, and the moments when that happens, and Kong is interacting with this girl, were really riveting, and the expressions that they were able to capture were downright phenomenal. Those were some amazing scenes, but even with Godzilla, there were a couple of moments where they decided to do something very interesting with the way he reacts to certain things. This is something, again, that they explored in moments of King of the Monsters, but here you see it a lot more. In particular, one shot, which I feel like is going to be sort of a dividing point for people. Like, some people are going to see that and think, oh, that's a great shot. And then some people are going to see that and think, that's a terrible shot. So, I don't know. There's going to be, I'm sure there's going to be some kind of a weird discourse around that. One thing I also want to highlight is the sound design. This thing is booming, but it does so in a very good way. It doesn't sound cacophonous at all. Like, there are very good uses of when things have to get really, really loud, or when things have to get a little quieter. There's also some really great use of it when it comes to the conversations that this girl and Kong are having. That was really, really great. I just wanted to put a spotlight on that. That was very impressive. The score by Junkie XL, Tom Holkenborg, also really, really great. It's loud and it's big and epic in all the ways that you expect a score for a Godzilla versus Kong movie to be. Now, of course, we've seen this showdown before. If you know, there was a movie that came out a very long time ago that had this. And so I mentioned that because if you are a fan of that movie, you're gonna really like some of the stuff in here, particularly one thing. I'm not gonna spoil what it is, but there's this one thing that they do that I immediately remember thinking that if this was in a theater, the audience would be losing their minds. Which brings me to that viewing experience, because I did not see this in a theater, I saw this at home. And I don't have my vaccinations yet, I'm still waiting, so unfortunately I don't want to go to a theater yet until that's done. But I kept feeling bad because this is one of those moments where I was like, I wish I was in an IMAX theater just surrounded by, massive speakers, and this thing was collapsing the whole place. I mean, this would have been a ball to watch on a big screen. And maybe I will once the vaccine comes through. It should be very, very soon for me, especially once the film approaches the finale, which is jaw-dropping stuff. Like, you're gonna love a lot of this, hopefully. Now, of course, not everybody's gonna love this movie, which is fine. If you're looking for something a little more nuanced in a Godzilla versus Kong movie, then I'm sorry to say that's not quite in here. It's got just enough in terms of human elements to be compelling, just about enough. When it comes to the humans, you essentially have two subplots. You have one, which is Alexander Skarsgård and Rebecca Hall. They're at the middle of all of this. They're basically at the center of the fights. And then you have Millie Bobby Brown, Brian Tyree Henry, and Julian Dennison, who are on their own mission. They're trying to uncover some stuff because Brian Tyree Henry essentially plays a conspiracy theorist, podcaster, and he's got his theories on something that's going on. What the film does really well is that it paces itself in a very effective way that none of them feel overbearing. And none of them feel boring either. Like, you're invested in them, and they all connect to other aspects of the plot as it's going forward, which I also thought was really great. Nothing feels wasted, nothing feels out of place. All the human moments, they feel like they belong in this movie, and they fit the narrative, which is also really, really effective. Yeah, it's not flawless by any means. It's definitely got those issues here and there, like a pretty wafer-thin story, if we're being honest. But again, do you care? This is the kind of film where you're going in expecting sophisticated, cinema. No, you're there to watch Godzilla get chokeslammed into a building by King Kong. That's what you're gonna get. I'm gonna give Godzilla vs. Kong an 8 out of 10. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Look forward to more reviews very soon. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe. Please like the video. It really helps the algorithm, and it really helps my review get noticed more if you did enjoy it. And I'll see you guys at the movies.